All right, you ready to get into games?
Let's talk games.
We are finally talking about Clair Obscur in a more concrete, tangible way. I think our first conversation was I had played about 4 or 5 hours and you had played
Maybe a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
6.
like slightly more. We've now beaten the game. We are going to open with a spoiler-free conversation, kind of like a micro review. Again, spoiler-free for people who still have not either finished it or started it and are maybe just curious, you know, what the vibes are with that. And then we will go into a spoiler cast where we talk about everything in the game. And that will be, you know, I will say that several times the way I'm saying it several times now, and it'll be time stamped and everything. So, yeah. And then, of course, there's not games, which we'll get into later. All right. Clair Obscur. Clair Obscur.
I understand that you are not the biggest fan of
the OST, yes.
The
I like
music.
that song, though. I do like that song.
That song, you throw that on. Apple Music has like a gaming playlist that I don't know how often they update their playlists and things like that, but they added that song to it, and every time it comes on, it puts a smile on my face.
Yeah. It's like a good one to do the gritty to, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's very little lad coded, but still fun. Yeah, I guess just to get at it, which this is like, I think the most boring take for people to get mad at me about, which is me not liking the clip. Because I've seen that happen a little bit online, because I this is like so not related to the game, but I was in the one of the chats for one of Kind of Funny's episodes, and I was like talking in there, and you know, I used to work there doing PS stuff with PS I Love You back when they had that PlayStation podcast. So people in the community know me. That, oh, hey Jan, it's good to see you again. Which honestly, always fun. If anyone from Kind of Funny is listening, like of the community, it's always, I get a kick out of that every time. I little ego boost. So like, ooh, yay, hello. Like, it's just fun to see, you know, the community members and many of those people still, you know, watch this content and my content today, blah, 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 blah. But I was in there and I mentioned, that I didn't really like the soundtrack. And then that kind of like, not spread along the internet, but like someone on like the Min-Max YouTube comments was like, oh, and Jan didn't like the soundtrack or whatever, or I don't know. Sure. Obviously, it's a very beloved soundtrack. I knew when I conceived of that, when the thought popped into my head, that I'm like, I don't think the soundtrack is very good. I knew that was like an unpopular thought. Does not stop me from having thoughts.
No, yeah, so, that's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of great pieces in the soundtrack, but overall, I find it actually to be really uneven, really jarring, really trying too hard in some spots, not letting ideas breathe enough in other spots. Yeah, I just don't. It is not a bad soundtrack. I think that's a little extreme. But there are moments though where I feel like this is actively bad. And you could say it's a taste thing, but the EDM stuff that's in there when it's like you know, Minoko's fighting somebody and it's like coo ka-choo, and then like mind you too, some of these fights are long if you're like thinking through stuff, if you're only dodging. Yeah, so I don't need 13 minutes of the I'm like, okay, look. And then sometimes you go into the overworld and it's literally just silence.
That is true.
And I'm like, what? Or sometimes you're in the overworld where you're very just casually walking around and it's like, it's like an aria is playing in the background. I'm like, it is the moment, when the composer's in their bag and they're like making a score that hits the emotional beats of the cutscene, that hits the moment, it is strong. It is good. But for all of those moments, there's so many more like
whiffs,
oddity, or just like I turned the OST off actually like 30% through the game because I'm like, it's not my taste. And I've also even done that with OSTs I like. I'm big into listening to my own music when I play a game. I know some people think that's weird, but that's like a me thing. So that's not always a condemnation on the OST, but I was like, I'm not liking the OST. I'm just gonna put my own music on. But for the end of the game, again, no spoilers on the end of the game, but for the end of the game, I'm like, you know what? It's the end. I'm gonna put the OST back on. We're gonna end it. You know, I want to see the authorial intent of the end. And yeah, the like some of the stuff going on when you like get to that final area, it's very grandiose. There's like the electric guitar. I think the electric guitar is trying too hard. Like I just was very like like when I turned it on, I felt like this is why you haven't been here. This is for the last 60 hours. But anyway, I'm sure we'll, you know, well, actually, what are your thoughts on the OST, just so we can kind of
put a pin on it,
wrap that up and then get into gameplay, which I think is people care about a lot more.
I like it. I don't know. It's a very, you know, I don't have a lot of sort of asks when it comes to OSTs and stuff. Like, give me a catchy tune, give me a recognizable beat. a tempo that I can rock with or something like that, like, and I'm good to go, right? Like, you know, I know people always sort of pull to the Lumiere, like, sort of, you know, theme song. They also pull to Minoko's theme, and I'm like, yeah, both of those are in my Apple playlist right now. Like, they are, I'm rocking with them because they rocking with me, kind of thing. I don't need a lot. I don't need a lot from it. Give me energy. In worst case, chances are, you already know this about me, I am not a lyrics person when it comes to music. Like, I listen to music with lyrics, but like very often the lyrics are in one ear and out the other, and I'm just like grooving with the beat and everything. So like, as long as there's like a bass, something that I can, again, like musically, tempo-ly like latch onto, I'm gonna rock with it, and that's totally fine. We were, you know, I'm playing Bravely Default, and you mentioned like, oh yeah, like, see, this is like good like background battle music or whatever. Like, you know, yeah, it's repeating and everything, but it's like, it's fine, it's good. It's not doing too much, it's not doing too little. It's kind of like just rocking with it. And in my head, I'm like, I mean, that's just how I felt about. That's how I feel about almost all battle music, except for Metaphor, where the guy comes in and that shit bangs every time.
that song is really good. I will say the thing with Metaphor, it's like, I'm not done with Metaphor. I'm like very early. I'm hoping to see more differentiation, like more songs.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
I don't think there is, and that's the only thing that's kind of like, that's kind of a lot for, like, it is very good, but I'm like, I think you might need like some switch up. But yeah. All right. Clair Obscur is a game. Thoughts on the game now that you've finished the game? Again, spoiler free. We're going to spoiler stuff later.
Yeah. Spoiler free. I guess, what could you give sort of the premise?
Yeah, sure.
Spoiler free premise to Metaphor.
Yeah. Clair Obscur. It's the same. It's all, you know, you say tomato, I say tomato. You know, I say tomato in French. Yeah, Clair Obscur is a game developed by, I believe is it Sandfall Interactive is the studio. Indie, Babuji indie, like, they had a good amount of funding through Kepler. So some people debate, like, is it indie if they have money? I think they're indie because they're independently owned. And sometimes when you're independently owned, you can get a good amount of money and resources to make your game. So yeah, that's the studio that made it. It is a turn-based RPG with real-time combat elements. The real-time elements are in the vein of quick-time events when you're on attack. So every like attack or move you do has a quick-time event associated with it. When you're on defense, that means dodging and parrying, or dodging or parrying rather. So every single attack is dodgeable or parryable. I think, is every attack a parryable? Maybe.
I think every attack is dodgeable or parryable. Like, there is a way to avoid every attack. Yeah,
I'm trying to think if everything can be parried. If not everything, it's almost everything. So like, you can do, theoretically, you could never take damage in this game. Yeah.
You can do a hitless run, which would be insane.
Which I don't know if anyone's done that. Like, actually, the thought of that is making me want to cry. So that is the mechanical construction of the game. A lot of people have pointed out that this is kind of like a JRPG inspired game, like the feel of the combat, the style of things, the way they construct the party member system, the idea of gaining party members, like, just feels very JRPG. Again, you can kind of debate like what makes something JRPG versus not in terms of like the stylizations. I'm of the mind that like JRPG needs to be Japanese because the J is, but you know, maybe that's a separate genre conversation.
Sure.
But those are things that go into the mechanics of it. And then narratively, the game is that you have this being known as the Paintress who paints a number in the sky. That number is a countdown where every time it's like your turn. So it'll be like 34, you know, well, it'll be like 40, 39, 38. And people that are that age die in a very like Thanos snap kind of death. And that event is known as the Gummage. So that is what's happening on in like lore wise in the story. And you are part of Expedition 33, which is like another expedition that's going out trying to kill the Paintress and stop this from happening. And every year there's been different expeditions since this sort of event happened in the society. And that's kind of where the game begins, where it's like, oh, it's another Gummage day, like in the town or whatever. And yeah, and I think those are like kind of the main things to point out for like what the setup is. Other stuff that we'll get into, I feel like you get to know more as you play the game, like the overworld map construction and things like that. But that is the general pitch of what the game is. Anything that you'd want to add to that?
No, not really. I guess a little, like just a touch more on the general combat. It is. I feel like in a lot of in I guess classic JRPG kind of fashion, like the characters you come across and who maybe like join your team and things like that, like they all kind of have their own sort of ways they do combat. It's not like a fluid sort of like class based combat system. It's like, oh no, like everyone has like their own moves that they can learn and unlock and then perform in combat and things like that. Like it's not like a I guess it's more like, you know, Pokemon to a very very loose degree. It is more like a Pokemon than a like Final Fantasy Tactics kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though those are both like strategic JRPGs, like you go into a battle with a mindset, with a strategy, and how you're going to do the combat. And there's like, you know, elemental effects, there's like weaknesses and strengths and resistances and you know, things like that. So just to paint a little bit better picture about like what the actual combat, like how things work.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, no, Claire, man, I really like the game. You know, I think to say it's not a game of the year contender is, I feel like what else have you played this year if this is like not a game of the year contender kind of thing, right? And again, you know, keeping it spoiler free and everything like that. Game is really good. Like people are talking about the writing, people are talking about the combat, the adventure, the emotional beats, things like that. It's really good. I think this is like, I saw a lot of talk about like, it was a TikTok I saw of like this, you know, other podcasts like kind of clip out thing where they were like, hey, the people seem to have forgotten about like Split Fiction, and it's like, oh, Split Fiction's also like really good, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, this, that, and there. And I'm like, I don't think people forgot about Split Fiction. I think just Claire is just also a good game that came out and now people are talking about it.
I gotta be honest, I feel like I forgot about Split Fiction. But I think that's because you know, I think people were to say that and be like, oh no, but like, why is that? You know, and like for me, the reason is because like this game, like I love this game. I think it is really incredible. There are a lot of complaints I have, which I'm sure we're getting to in a little bit. But yeah, like I feel like the combat is so good in this game, and the story is really captivating, has like really nice emotional beats to it. And is overall intriguing. I think where the story ended up for me was not as high. Like it hit its high point earlier for me personally than, you know, it did in terms of like how the plot moved along. So like when I felt like this game was like narratively at its best was like, you know, I don't know, like 1 or 2 acts in where I was like, whoa, what if this is how good it is now? And then like the other parts didn't hit as hard for me. But overall, I think as like a package, like it's still like really narratively intriguing. But yeah, this is a game where the combat is so good that I don't care about. I have so many like nitpick complaints that do wear on you as the hours go, where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that this game's designed this way. It's so frustrating. But like, I don't care because that's how good the combat system is. It's also like a shockingly funny game. I think that's like an understated element of the
like
game.
Unintentionally funny? Or
no, it's totally intentional. I think it's very intentionally funny. Yes, the people where I have been wanting to, again, I mentioned I want to do more writing. I think one thing that would be great is to try to work on some pieces about this game, and maybe get some quotes from like the developers about like their perspective on making it and all that. But like, there's so many intentionally funny things about this game, and I think that's what helps make it like a good RPG. I grew up playing much shorter games. I talked to this many times. I grew up on platformers, some action adventure games. That's kind of like my core, you know, and a couple like fighting games, party games, sports games, stuff like that. So all those experiences are pretty like short. You know, it's either you play a game in Madden or you beat Super Mario Sunshine, you know, like so becoming like an adult and playing long games for the first time as an adult has been kind of a challenge, because I think at least like when you were a kid, it's like, well, you had like a lot of time, so it's like maybe that was easier to do. But like it even a game of any length really, because I'm playing so many games and I want to go through so many games and have those experiences. Like I'm constantly hitting up that like how long to beat. Like I'll start a game and be like, how long is this? Like, I'm like, oh, this is fun. Is it done? Like I just like and you know, people can see that as like a negative trait or not. That is just like a trait that I have. So it is rare for me to one, want to be playing a long game, two, spend extra time in a long game. It's like, look, I'm trying to, you know, again, what do I always say? When the credits roll.
So do I.
Yes. When the credits roll, I roll. And with Clair Obscur, like this game is so incredible. Not only have I done just on the initial run most of the side content, but now that I've beaten it, I'm going back to get the platinum to clean up everything else, just to like have that full semi-completionist run. Obviously, like I guess like, you know, it's like I found every single like picto probably or whatever, which is one of the mechanics in the game. But yeah, like into the split fiction part that like you brought up from like this other podcast, it is a testament to how good this game is, that like this game has eclipsed everything for me. Blueprints threw that thing in the trash. Like, and I liked Blueprints a lot. I was having fun with Blueprints.
I can go back to it.
No, I do want to play it. I do want to finish playing it. But like, I just totally obliterated. And I was so locked in on Blueprints. I was really enjoying it. We were playing it like every night. And that was another like, wow, which is like, what a great year for games it's been, at least for my personal like tastes and sensibilities and stuff, where it's like there's a game that I was so locked in on, which was Blueprints, also outside my genre Real House, which was really nice. And then Clair came and just destroyed everything, because like I think and this is also why I hold back, like, well, not hold back, like I'm stopping myself from doing it, but this is why I don't like give very high praise to a lot of games. I think a lot of people can sometimes take that as like, oh, you're so hard to please or whatever. And like a little bit, because I consume a lot of stuff. Like I don't glaze all these games because I want to save it for like the games that really make an impact. And Clair is one where it's just like, you know, you're in the crowded bar of games and Clair is the only one I see, because that's how like strong it is. But yeah, I guess like, I don't know, I guess we should get into maybe like more specifics of what makes the game special. I can talk more to the humor and things, but I guess before I get into like maybe like the humor and we like unpack more of the combat, what are some like the standout parts of this game to you that like made it a highlight?
I think for me it is a good balance of game mechanics and story. And I know that sounds very generic, right? Like that's literally the goal of almost every game. It's like, oh, we want to make sure it's fun to play and it's interesting to play, and you know, but like I think they do such a good job in this game of introducing like mechanics to you that, so I'm a systems person, right? Like I love systems. I love, you know, building up engines and games and things like that, and like, you know, keep it going. This game introduces so many like small little mechanics that in the very beginning, my brain started working on like, oh, I could see how this is going to like evolve and how this might like interact with other things and like, you know, build on top of that. And like, this game delivered on then giving you like more to do with these like little mechanics in the form of characters, in the form of everything, like across the board. Like if you have a strategy, they give you so many tools to like lean into things that paired with a story that like I personally found very, very interesting. Like I was very much, you know, like you said, you felt, you know, in the first sort of like, you know, earlier parts of the game were more like story heavy, or like the story hit more for you in the early parts than the later parts. I was in my seat the entire way through. I was standing, clapping, applauding, throwing flowers the whole time. And the more it went on and deeper it went, I'm like, yeah, no, they're in their bag. They're giving me exactly what I want. They're giving me what I didn't know I wanted, which is like, I think an impressive thing to do.
I do think where the story goes was more intriguing than like I think the thing that I liked about the story is that I wasn't able to clock it, which I don't think a story is bad if I know where it's going, because I think you can still have like an impact. Yeah, like I don't think you need surprise to have an impact, but I wasn't expecting what it became. And once I sat with it more, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can kind of rock with this. And I really I really personally like the ending of the game specifically. I thought was really strong. And you know, what does my brother Edwin always say? It's how you start and it's how you end.
Yeah.
And even though I wasn't like one of those, a lot of people were like, the first 10 minutes of the game, I was in tears. It did not hit. It did not do that for me. Like, I don't know. I knew they were going to get.
Why do people do that? They do that with Up. They do that with this. They do it with like all these things where it's just like a very emotional beginning, and they're just like, oh, this is art. This is the pinnacle of storytelling. I don't know.
I mean, this goes back to our conversation where I was talking about. I forgot. There was like a totally different topic, but I talked about how like, yeah, didn't cry at the beginning of Ori and the Blind Forest. Like, I don't think that's that
another
moving.
one. Yeah.
Like, I think there are people that. And maybe they're just more emotionally in tuned. Hey, y'all probably healthier than me, take the ball and run with it. I don't know. But like, this is a thing that like lightly irks me a little bit, which is like seeing a sad thing. Wow, you made an emotional impact. I don't think it's enough to like have something sad happen to be emotionally impactful. Like, I don't believe seeing someone's dog die is inherent, like in media, like not in real life, obviously. In media, seeing that is like inherently tear-inducing because it depends on how you do it. Like, I think there's times where that can be really impactful. There's times where things can like, there's a reason like sometimes things hit and sometimes things are seen as just like cheesy, and it's like that's all in the execution to me. And it's not that I think the beginning of Clair Obscur is badly executed. I just think that because there was no, world building done yet, because it's the beginning of the game, I think the only way that those scenes where it's like, okay, you see the first Gumatch happen, and that's like the scene that people were talking about, the only way that would have been impactful for me is if they had really done some like really great, fantastic, like grade S writing. And it's not that they badly wrote that scene. It's just that they didn't write it enough to offset the fact that I don't have any already emotional attachment to it. So they just couldn't do or also that can be in the acting too, which I do think the like the animation work, the mocap work, like that kind of execution in Clair, I think is also really strong. Like, I think there's some really good animation work there. Despite it not being like it's a pretty solid like visual game, but it's not like massively high fidelity, and within that I still think they do a great job like getting the characters to look emotive and sell the lines.
I agree. I think that they have.
It's something I'm holding a gun to you. I agree.
I agree with everything you're saying. No, I think that's totally spot on, right? Like, I think they are able to convey much more better emotional scenes than the very beginning. And I don't know if it's because it's just the beginning and like, so it's, sort of the first thing you see, you can't really spoil like the opening to the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the one that people talk about because it's kind of the most experienced one, because again in the beginning, or if it's just like, are people really latching onto it as like,
I think people really latched onto it, like, but I don't know why, because I don't know, and maybe it's also this is not like I've like read more so now whatever, because again I'm trying to get back into my reading bag and it's been a struggle because I can't find any books I like, but I don't know, it's kind of like, it's funny because you say that you hate sad stuff like in media, you don't like sad movie, like, well, it's not that you don't like them, but you do not seek that out. You don't want to watch a sad movie. You're like, I would like to not watch a sad movie. For me, all I do is sit in sadness and despair. Fucked up books, fucked up movies. Like, all I do is consume fucked up stuff. Not literally exclusively, because obviously I'm a big fan of sitcoms, and those are like some of the most lighthearted media you can consume. But like, all I do is like sit in the narrative darkness. So it's like, oh, this isn't really, and I don't know if that's part of why I'm not like, oh my God, Gustav's girlfriend, who's actually his ex anyway, like that, like, you know what I mean? I was like, I think that's the other thing too. I was caught up in like the fuckboy of it all, where I was like, oh, he's sad that his ex is dying. Like, I don't know. I wasn't that moved by it. But you mentioned systems. This is a little bit of a big ask for you, but I think you're a good one to lead us into this. Can you explain more of how like the combat works in terms of the systems? Because I think a big part of this game is like the Pictos. So can you like explain what that system is and how it impacts the game?
Yeah, sure. So in a lot of RPGs in general, right, you find that there's usually some mechanic around like abilities or skills or whatever they might call it, right? In Clair Obscur, that comes in this the Picto system, they call it. And so the way it works is you find these things called Pictos out in the world, right? These are abilities that you find and you pick up, and they're equipable abilities. And when an ability is equipped, if you have the ability equipped and you win 4 battles with it, it doesn't need to be like all consecutive or anything like that. But like after 4 battles with a Picto equipped, you unlock the Picto to then be able to equip it using sort of like ability points as opposed to slotting it in one of 3 ability slots.
Well, Lumina specifically, only because there is, I think, ability points for this. Because there's like attribute points, and then there's like Lumina.
Yeah, so this game does a thing where they don't call anything a normal word. They have their own like in-universe word for it. So it's like you get a little confusing trying to explain it without going into like the lore of the game itself. But yeah, so you can slot 3 abilities, or you can spend Lumina, which is like an ability point kind of currency that you get to enable the abilities that way. There's other details in it, like when you slot something, you also get like stat boosts with it that you don't get if you spend the points to kind of enable an ability and things like that. But like that's
I never paid attention to that.
Yeah.
Like genuinely,
really
I know some people really did pay attention to it, but like I did not.
Yeah. So the whole idea is that you're unlocking these Pictos, which are abilities, and then you're unlocking the abilities so that you can then apply it to more than one character at a time by spending this like ability currency kind of thing. But these abilities have also like they run the gamut for what they can allow you to do. Like there are abilities that just like increase health or increase, fire damage or something like that. But then there's also ones that do like crazy stuff, like you start the game with, or you start each battle with shield, or like you start each turn with extra move power, like there's there are power ups and debuffs and buffs and things that you can do, and like there's Pictos that kind of like work with all these various systems, and so like it makes for a really, really unique, like each character can be their own powerhouse in a way if you like set up the Pictos right, and like you've unlocked things and you've spec'd into certain builds, and also each character has their own skills, which is like almost like spells you could think of like in a traditional RPG kind of terms. Yeah. It's like, okay, like each character can have 6 spells equipped at a time, and these spells take energy, or they have their own kind of mechanics to them that's unique to each character. They require AP to be used, yes. Which is basically like it's MP basically. Yeah It's MP that like you get each turn kind of thing.
Yeah, like it refills each turn. There's other ways to refill it, just through kind of like that Picto system that you talked about, but
Loon, who is like one of the first characters you unlock and use, she's
I think every character that's on the cover art is free game to talk about.
Fair.
Pretty much.
Loon's like a sort of traditional, she would fill the role of like a traditional mage in like any other kind of RPG, where like her thing is all about like casting spell, shooting fire or shooting lightning or shooting ice or doing all these things, sometimes in combination. And like her sort of character mechanic is that whenever she performs a spell, she generates a like staining, which is like a token or some elemental token. And then she can use these elemental tokens to like power up other spells that she do, which also then generate their own tokens. And so it's like a very, engine buildy kind of system there, where you're managing what tokens you've already generated with what moves you want to cast that will then generate other tokens.
Yeah.
And like a mage, she, has the elements, she can heal, she can do all sorts of stuff. And it's about like kind of balancing what role do you want her to play on your team?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go a little bit more into like team structure. Or,
I could talk a little bit more about, I think that was a really good job doing a base setup. I think one of the things that I really like about this game, and also this is a good point to point out that like, it's a pretty like I think they do a pretty good job tutorializing. The only thing that I felt like wasn't that well tutorialized was sort of just like to what degree that basically the flow of the game and maybe it was like, I'm sure they attempted to tutorialize it, but I kind of understood it more when you told it to me, which is just that like you want to get a Picto, you want to learn it. That's like the language they use for when you do the 4 battles or whatever. You want to learn it as soon as possible, just so that you have the option to like equip it or not equip it. One thing I want to add to what you said too, with the like equipping the Pictos. With the currency you use for that, which again is called like Lumina, you have, I'm making it up, like let's say Loon has 80 Lumina, you know, because you get more Lumina than it's like you assign them to like each of your characters. If she has 80 Lumina, she can then spend all 80 Lumina, you know, equipping the Pictos. And some Pictos, oh, this one cost 20 because it's like really cool. Oh, this one's like, no, it costs 1. So it's like, you know, Dodger is one of the first ones you get, which is just you get AP when you do a successful dodge, at least like or you do a consecutive amount of
something like that.
Something like that. It's related to dodging. Like dodging will give you AP, like doing at least one like good dodge or whatever. Perfect dodge. That's like cost 1. And that's like you can mix and redo that every time versus like when you're leveling up and you have like more traditional like attribute points, it's like that is something where they like give you like a respec currency and like obviously some people they always respec. I like never respec pretty much because I'm like I trust the build. So that's like its own regular, very traditional thing. But something that I really love about this game that I do think makes it really unique. And some people argue it makes it like an easier to play like RPG than, you know, maybe Persona or something. I'm kind of like, I could take it either way, but I like this more because I hate this element of other RPGs. You don't have to like worry about SP. So like by that I mean you can battle forever. Like you don't need like you can obviously like if you you know, let's say your characters are really low on health, like there's not as many ways to like heal outside of battle other than like resting at like a flagpole or a camp, which the camp you can like use at any point in the overworld. Versus like in something like Persona or a lot of other traditional RPGs, like you go into like a dungeon and then it's like, okay, well, you can like maybe heal or like, you know, do stuff outside of battle. But at the end of the day, you only have so much like total ways to use your like spells, you know, and like you can have items that refill that, but like you only have so many items, and at a certain point you need to do like almost like a long rest.
Yeah.
In Clair, you don't have that, and I really like that because that's like something that I sort of hate managing in other games. Like I hate.
Well, you're a hoarder too.
Yeah, like I don't like having to manage my SP, or especially like I think in other RPGs, and this is also something unique to Clair. I feel like every character in Clair is exciting, and in other RPGs, it kind of feels like there are those battles where it's like, well, we're fighting the fire enemies, so obviously, like, the ice girl is going to be doing most of her stuff, and I'm just going to be spending, you know, and then I feel like in other RPGs, I end up with these really, like, uneven moments where, like, especially freaking Persona 5 is, like, notorious for this, in my opinion. In that game, like, Joker has kind of everything. Everyone else is, like, they have one role, and Joker has, like, any role. So, like, he's often, like, you know, spending the most SP, and then it's just kind of, like, then it's like, well, do I want to like do my long rest? There's only one guy. That's sort of whatever. The only thing I don't love about Clair is that you can't heal outside of battle. Other than the chroma, you have like kind of a big healing vial. You have like up to like 3, I think, to start, and you can get more. That lets you heal outside of battle. But like you can't do something like use one of your healing spells outside of battle, which I do think mechanically makes sense because they're not like tracking your like spell usage like long term. But it is something that's the only like thing holding you back. But I really like that in this game because it doesn't feel like I have to, I don't know, manage another thing. It's all about just like using my turns and my moves wisely. But yeah, everyone I feel like can play their own role, but also like play different roles at different times. Like there were times where I'd have Loon as like the healer because she's one of the first characters that even has like a healing spell. But every character you notice that like, oh, eventually they can get something to heal themselves or maybe even other people over time. But yeah, I really like that element of it a lot. And to add to what you said about the combat, a lot of characters, maybe in a way, not all, I guess, but a lot of the characters have some version of like building something and consuming something. I noticed is like a big mechanical trope in the game. And when I noticed it, I was almost like, well, like, okay, so that's the whole game. But then I was like, that's the whole game. It's really exciting. It's so fun. So like with Loon, you know, to kind of be more specific on what the things you were bringing up, it's like, let's say she had like 3 fire stains. You can have up to 4 stains like in your little wheel. And then it's like, oh, well, I do a move that like is powered up when I consume the fire stain. So that's kind of what, you know, just to add more specificity to it when we talk about like consuming and using. So there's like so many things you can go into, or you can do something basic, which my stuff with Loon was very basic. I just kind of filled up her meter, and then I would do mayhem, which like you can consume all the stains to break. Breaking is another big thing in this game, which, you know, if you've played other video games that have those kinds of mechanics, it's known as, you know, staggering is sometimes what they call it in other things where
stunning,
you like it's break, and then it says that they're stunned for, you know, usually not that fucking long, but whatever. But then there's also moves you have that can like, can extend break. So then maybe you're like messing around with all of that. I think one of the other things I really loved about the combat of this game is I was shocked by how I found new characters to like be obsessed with. I think a lot of times in other party-based games, it's like we all have that one person where it's like, this person's whack. It's like, I don't really like this person. And obviously, again, it's going to be like a play style thing. But despite having like, I feel like I have a very different play style than you, and you know, you have a different one than like whoever. I feel like there aren't any whack characters. Like, I think if you think there's a whack character, you probably just don't know how to use them. Because all of them are like really good. Like, I don't know. And they all have similar, because they all are not, again, they don't all use a build something, consume something, but a lot of them do. CL is another like pretty early, you know, cover of the game character that you get, who has like the card system of like you apply foretell and then you can consume it. So it's like, okay, cool. Like everyone's kind of doing similar-ish stuff. So it's really easy to learn new characters for that reason. And then I think the game also does a great job at being very restrained on forcing you to use other characters. Like I think there's only one moment in the whole game where they like force your party to be a certain configuration, where it's like the classic, like the group separated. Now we have these two and these two. That happens like one time, I think, in the whole game. Maybe two if I'm forgetting one. But and then they also have like one other thing that happens later where it's like you're sort of incentivized to use like a new party member, which I think is kind of smart on their part. But other than that, like there's not really and now we're making you hang out with this person. And I think that's them clearly having faith in the systems that they made, where it's like and also like that's also so impressive that there's not like wildly obvious or wildly forced moments. Like one thing I don't like about a lot of RPGs is that it does feel like you're playing who you're battling in a really specific way, where it's like, okay, this is obviously like, okay, I need someone who's gonna be they're weak to nuclear attacks, and then I'm gonna have to spec into nuclear. Like I don't, with some exceptions, and it also depends on how you play it. You go into respecking and going wild all the time to have like the most efficient thing ever. But I feel like at any time, anyone can take on anyone. Yeah. I don't feel like they're like, this isn't a game where it's like. It's not a Pokemon game. Yes. Like, even though you said, I didn't use the comparison, but like, it's not going to be like, oops. Again, Mael's another core, like, cover of the box character. Oh my God, I'm fighting Schmitty and I have Mael. Well, obviously I can't win because Mael is weak to Schmitty's laser eyes. You know, it's like, there isn't that kind of thing. And like, when I first started playing it, I was sort of like, oh man, because there's strengths and weaknesses to like the enemies and stuff. I'm like, they don't display that anywhere. You can't learn that. That's like so dumb. I hate that. And then as I played more, I was like, yeah, you don't need that. You really don't need it. And I think it could be distracting into like, I think that is an example of a design decision that feels a little like, really? But makes sense for the game, because I think if they surface that, it would be almost telling you as a player that like you need to configure for that and you don't. Sure. And I think that's actually like a smart kind of change they did, but that was something that kind of like when I first started playing, I was like, really? You don't have a way for me to like know these weaknesses and stuff? But yeah, I guess are there other things that you want to speak to with the combat, or any highlights of the game that you want to draw to before we get into spoiler stuff with like other characters, our builds?
Not really combat, but so far we've mostly talked praise, but I think there are still some weaker elements to the game as well.
Cracks knuckles.
And again, without going into spoilers, I think that just like some of the navigation and like the world is a very interesting world to be in and move around and like see. I was talking to our friend Justin about like just some of the like visual elements and like some of the places
art design.
You go to.
This is like art design a lock for like, I forgot what they call it in Keeley's Game Awards, but like there's a word for, it's like either art design or visual, whatever. Like I think creatively, like the monsters.
Oh yeah, like
and like the people are
the
like
character
really
design,
good.
the world design, all of that, incredible, very unique, very bespoke, and like has its own language in the game, right? However, I think that to the detriment of some like player experience, you find that it's easy to get turned around in some places and lost, and there's not a like map, a tradition, at least like a traditional map in like once you're in, I don't know, a location.
There is no mini map at all, and there is no map when you're in a. Again, I wouldn't really call them dungeons because they're just not
They're
dungeons.
not dungeons,
But they're like levels almost.
Yeah.
Because you have like an overworld, and then you like can go into. It's very like
Yeah.
explicitly like you're going to like kind of a. There's like a hazy like aura, and it'll say like coastal cave, and you have to hit square to enter. You're playing on PlayStation. Hit square to enter. It's like and that's like its own little kind of level, and that level has no map.
Yeah. Once you're in
It's got
a
no
location,
map. That's it.
you got to go off of the
Vibes.
environmental storytelling and a prayer.
And guess what they're not good at? Environment. Actually, not environmental story. I guess I would say environmental like cues.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
And like environmental breadcrumbing. I think for all that this team is great at, I think this is like the number one weakness they have. And I hate to be like the guy who's like, power through, it's gonna be great. I genuinely think like power through this game. And that's why I think if you're seeing the combat and enjoying it like all right, like, oh, it's pretty good. Power through the parts you don't like because the combat only gets better. And the stuff you don't like, it does not get worse. So that's,
but it gets
that's at least
less.
something. I think it gets a little less. I do think some of the worst areas are the early area, like that underwater area.
Oh, it is so easy to get lost.
Why'd
there.
you make that? Honey, what was this? So yeah, there's very, and an attempt to be brief, but also to be specific. Cause I think it's like, I don't want to be too like, I'm lost, but like, why am I lost? I think there is it's very samey, like the environmental design, like once you get into like a kind of a biome, a level or whatever, it's very visually samey. I think there's also too many, despite being like fairly linear, like these levels are not even wide linear. Like these levels are way more linear than like an area in like God of War 2018 or whatever. But they are not like linear enough, and they're not visually distinct enough to know where you're going and where you've been. And I've gotten lost in levels that are like kind of linear when I'm looking for something specific. Because, again, big background in 3D platformers. I think of like a game like Jak and Daxter. That is an area that has very much like
everywhere
levels.
in this game is Spider Cave.
Yes. That is actually
insane.
perfect. That is perfect. That is exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is. I'm standing up. I'm clapping. I'm crying. I'm throwing up. Like you nailed it. Absolutely. Because like there, like a level that I do get kind of lost in when I'm looking for like all the orbs or all like the power cells or whatever in Jak and Daxter that I think is still a well-designed level, but I just get lost in a lot, is like the snowy area. Cause it's like, again, you're looking for something so specific. I'm like, where? I feel like I've been everywhere with it. But Spider Caves is like enemy number one because it is so visually the core area, specifically the center area of that area. What if you made a level that was just that center area? It is so visually stagnant that I don't have a way to distinguish where I've been and where I'm going. I think they have too many corridors that wind back to a core area, which then make it so that like it is so hard to do what I think most players want to do and what you benefit to do. Because again, you look around, you find Pictos, you find Lumina, you find notes, which is like, I think we all, for the most part, want to determine what is the core path, what's the side path, and make sure that we do the side path before the core path. It is like impossible to do that in this game. There have been so many times where I'm playing this and like you were always ahead of me in this game where I'd say, Isaiah, where do I go? I'm not getting it. And not only that, I think if you were, which I've like glanced at a couple like guides for like the collectibles, mostly YouTube, just because frankly they've been just easier to understand than like the written ones I've seen. No offense to the written ones.
It's a confusing game to.
It's kind of like it's and making guide content is hard, but like y'all who are making the walkthrough, God bless you, because that's got to be a hell. Because even just getting players oriented in the right spot, like there's just so little visual distinction. And I think even the stuff they do that's good with some of the telegraphing can backfire. Like one of the early telegraphing bits is like, follow the lights. But if you get turned around, the lights go in both directions. It's not like they're pointing in any way. And this is a game that does utilize, plenty of, I think, very for players, clockable telegraphing, which like, we all know of the complaint, the yellow paint or whatever. Like they have white paint. It's the same concept, which I'm never going to be against the yellow paint. Like I gotta be honest with y'all. Like I got no problem with yellow paint. So they have like stuff like, white paint on certain parts. And like, there are some attempts and sometimes they're successful in that. But yeah, there are too many times where, again, too visually same, too many winding corridors. And again, the lack of mini-map. Also, the lack of audio barks really hurts this game as well. I think there's definitely times where, like, I clearly don't know where to go, don't know what to do, don't know what's happening. There's also no, like, objectives or sub-objectives listed in the game. There's no, like, quest tracking in the game either. So there's a lot of, like, lack of information in the game that I think is at the detriment of like you exploring it more easily and wanting to engage with it on a deeper level. There's like there came like a part in the game where I'm like, okay, I want to do some cleanup before I like go to the next area. Where is that one place that had the cave where it like the walls closed in? I don't know. I'd have to just go like, and I know people that have played this game and like written down notes, and I think that definitely is a solution. I very stubbornly refuse to do that because I'm like, why should I do this extra work when like you should have done this in your game? So those things do suck. And I have nothing positive to say about that element of the game really, other than the fact that like, hey, you get through it and there's like great gameplay, there's great story, there's like great other stuff. Yeah. So F it. But yeah, I do think that part is hell. I think for me, the last non-spoiler thing I want to talk to is just more specifically some of the humor in the game. The game is very funny. The game is funny in that it has a lot of like absurdist situations, which I think this is like another thing I want to write about. I think a lot of the best RPGs are obviously like they are like some hero story, and they usually have like big stakes. It's usually the end of the world. It's pretty much every RPG is the end of the world. And this is not really any different. It's like, oh, it's the end of the world, so same vibes. But I think with that, you need, that's the tragedy. What does every tragedy need? It needs catharsis. That is the construction of, if you cannot have a tragedy and not have catharsis. So, and that catharsis usually, sometimes it can be like something silver lining. A lot of times it is humor. And I think this game nails putting catharsis in its tragedy through stuff like you come across like a gestural village pretty early on. They're like a species that exists in the world. They're funny and silly. They're like Goron if they were even derpier, which is wild because Goron are like the derpiest things that you could make. They have like funny, dumb stuff. Like they have the "this is fine" dog meme in the game. But even outside of that, because I do think meme humor is a little like whatever, like. Maybe that's not your cup of tea, but they have stuff like there are these gestural challenges that exist like on the different beaches throughout the world that are like optional challenges. And they have one like fairly early on that a lot of people were talking about, which is like their version of is it called Always Up or like so. Up something or something? Like the hell platformer where you're just going up and it's like, bunch of like honestly crummy looking assets thrown together. Like that's that game. Crummy looking assets thrown together. Funky physics, really hard platforming, really like unforgiving, slippery, annoying, mean. Like that's that style of game chained together is another one that kind of came out recently, and that was very big. So they have their own version of that. A little bit definitely easier, like way easier than those games. And rightfully so, because I'm a big believer in like anything that your platforming is successful when you construct a level around what your platforming is capable of doing. So, and I think they nailed that with that. It's funny because a lot of people say that this is like the worst thing in the game. I think it's one of the best things in the game because because it's dumb. Like I think the platforming, when you're platforming in a level, that sucks. When you're platforming in a hellscape they created because they know that their platforming is kind of slippery and can make for a funny hellscape 3D. Like it is like, it's avant-garde is what it is. Like it's so good. And that stuff's funny. Their gestural challenges are funny because they like sort of add absurdity to the mechanics they already made, and they make you do dumb things that are hard. It feels very like PSP Daxter mini games, and but also like another thing that I want to shout out for like a specific example on how this game is funny is there is a combat challenge that exists. That's like there's a lot of combat challenges, and it's like pretty hard. And when you finish it, like you can talk to like there's like an NPC near it. And you can talk to them again. They have like new dialogue, and they're like, oh, did you have fun? And the episodes are yes or no, and I said no, and they said, I screenshot it. I wish I had the exact language. They said, no, I know you had fun. Yeah. And it's like, that's fucking hilarious. Like, that's so funny. And like, there's so many times where the game throws something really absurd, or they're being like little shits. Like the designers were like little shits, and they're standing in the back and they're giggling, and you can see them like giggling, and that's like so funny, and that's like peak humor. And so like, yeah, I think when we talk about video game humor, a lot of times we think of games that are like attempting to be funny, like by design, by genre. You know, games like what's that one game a lot of people liked, but I actually really hated? The British one that came out last year. Thank Goodness You're Here.
Thank Goodness You're Here.
Like, that's obviously a comedy game. Untitled Goose Games. Okay. But, you know, there are games that are like, I'm about being funny. But like, we need to talk about the games that aren't about being funny, but they are funny, because that's even funnier than the funnier games. Like, it's a very amusing time. And I think that stuff also it adds more flavors, because like, as much as I like dark stuff, I don't need like dark brooding all the time. Like the fact that they can have like these light, they have like a gradient of like emotions that they pull on, and it makes the impactful stuff feel even more impactful, because they're not beating me over the head with it every 10 seconds. It's not like every day they go back to the camp and they cry in their diary. It's like sometimes they're just like hanging out or getting drunk, or you know, talking to their friends, or like, you know, like they have a lot of like differentiation. The camp stuff I was also very impressed by. I kind of hate camping with my party. I feel like it is the lore dump spot, and I feel like there's always so much dialogue, and I kind of get sick of it in a lot of games. In this game, I think they do a great job. You exhaust those conversations really quickly. Yeah. They're really good at like brevity. They're good at like their cutscenes too. Snappy, quick. Yeah. These are not 30-minute, 1-hour cutscenes. Atlas, RGG Studio, look across the aisle and maybe get the pad out. See if you could, you know. And I like their cutscenes, and I think it works for their games. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was kind of like refreshed having an RPG where the cutscenes were not 15 to 30 minutes long.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
But any last thoughts before we go into spoilers?
I don't think so. To cap the spoiler free, game is good. Definitely one of my game of the year contenders.
It's my current game of the year.
I would say it is too for me. Obviously, you know, I still got, honestly, one I'm really excited to play more of, The Altars. I think that has potential to be up there. And then obviously my Death Stranding's coming out soon.
Oh yeah.
That's gonna be dropping. Me and Sam are gonna be backpacking across, I guess, the United Cities of America. Yeah, I don't know. We'll be there. There's other contenders.
I'm gonna be there regardless.
Yeah. Well, are you? Is a separate topic.
Oh, Death Stranding.
Yeah. Are you still gonna play some more? What is going on?
I have temporarily, which is kind of like a cop out to playing, but it's like because I'm also busy with other stuff, I'm not ready to finish Death Stranding 1. I'm gonna see, which I know the answer is probably no, so I might also just do it on my own if I want to. But Chia from Remap, they are playing Death Stranding 1 because they started it, but then they're like, let me restart it or whatever. And I said, if you catch up to where I am, I will finish the game. But they notoriously don't play like a lot of games. Like don't finish a lot of games. They play a lot of games. It's kind of like a meme on Remap that like, oh, Chia, like, you know, where's her top 10 list? It's like, oh, like I haven't finished half the thing, you know. So it's that's kind of like where I've landed with it. I also might just go back on my own accord without Chia if I need to, which I likely would need to. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe because then it's like, okay, cool. Like I'm in it with somebody else. But yeah, definitely Death Stranding 2, that's all you, baby. You take the ball and run with it.
All right, we're going to be there. But yeah, so game is good. Game of the year contender for me. Currently my game of the year pick, but obviously we're still only in June. Other games are around the corner. And oh man, yeah, that song is definitely going to be the metaphor battle of this year for me, where I'm just going to be playing it.
It was very catchy.